Hi, I'm Brendan Gallagher, and this is Pittsburgh Inspired. Today I'm here with Dr. Jim Withers, who founded Operation Safety Net here in Pittsburgh and also the Street Medicine Institute. Dr. Jim Withers has been practicing street medicine now for 26 years, and thank you so much for having me in your home today.
Great, you're always welcome.
So Jim, tell Pittsburgh a little bit, tell us what street medicine is.
Okay. Well, here in Pittsburgh, I started working under bridges medically with the homeless back in 1992. At that point, I was really trying to create a new classroom for medical residents and students because, you know, we get so boxed into having people come to us, go through our hospitals, go through our offices, and really people have to deal with us on our terms all the time. And you never really get to know the human beings that are behind it. So as a kid, I made house calls with my dad, and I also worked with my family when I was little.
So your father was also a doctor?
My dad was a family practitioner. My mother's a nurse. And so I made house calls with Dad in rural Pennsylvania. And we worked as a family in Nicaragua, Guatemala, St. Lucia. And so the idea that you got to get to know the people at a deeper level if you're going to be part of their healing process, that was just so organic to my thinking that when I got through medical school and into the structure of healthcare, I realized that we missed so much. Before I got involved with the street work, I did a lot of domestic violence work.
Okay.
And that really opened my eyes to how a person's lived experience actually is determining all these other things, their blood pressure, their depression, their ability to come to appointments and things like that. And it's just this giant secret, you know, and
it all contributes. It's all part of that person.
Right. I always say it's like you can only understand the planet's motions if you understand that they're going around the sun.
Right.
So for so many people, there's that thing in their life that is determining everything else, and you just can't be on the same page unless you understand what they're living and what they're going through. I call it reality-based medicine.
Yeah.
So I got tired of being in that setting, and I felt like I needed, and my students needed, a chance to get into someone else's world, kind of recreate the house call. And I went through a bunch of different things, international work with them, but I wanted it to be local, and I wanted it to be with people that were just not getting good health care.
Yeah.
And I really wanted people who were almost, you know, giving up, and because if I could make it work for them, then I knew I was really learning something. I didn't want, you know, half measures. So I wanted to go radical. And I got this idea that the people that were sleeping under bridges might be the best teachers that I could find. So once I decided that I wanted to go visit people in the homeless camps medically, then I just began a search. And I found a guy who used to be homeless, Mike, and talked him into taking me along. And that's how my adventure began. And I started immediately seeing very sick people, terrible things out there, people with maggots in their legs, people who were pregnant, not getting care, people with cancers and things. And I almost wanted to turn and run the other way.
Yeah.
But my curiosity and compassion just got the better of me, and I kept going and going, and pretty soon other people volunteered. Nurses, they always seem to get things quicker. And pretty soon we were up and running, and I called it Operation Safety Net. It's been under the Pittsburgh Mercy system. The Sisters of Mercy is who I work for. So they've been really supportive. And it actually continues their legacy of caring for the poor in our community.
That's great.
Yeah.
So when you started to work with the homeless, were they welcoming of you and a doctor coming to help them out? Or how did you bridge that gap?
It helped a lot to have someone who they knew and trusted, Mike. It made it safer, I think, for me.
And Mike was previously homeless.
Yeah, Mike had been homeless himself when he was younger, and they knew him, they trusted him. He'd been doing street work for 6 years.
Okay.
So
already helping
I was just
people.
a tag along. In fact, I got a book that told you how to dress like a homeless person, and I kind of overdid it, and they just thought I was another guy at first, and then it became obvious that I needed to explain myself, and I think it surprised folks. I remember one guy just broke down crying, and he said, "I can't believe anybody cares that we're still alive out here." And but I had to kind of invent what a doctor under a bridge does. I had done a lot of wilderness medicine stuff.
Yeah.
So I was comfortable with having a backpack with medicines. And pretty soon I was practicing medicine. Then I realized I had to tell my malpractice carrier, and I should tell my boss. And so I did. And they both said, no problem. Just make good notes, practice good medicine. And it's been so amazing in your own city to be able to create a new form of medical practice. People love it. We've got volunteers from, all age ranges with us.
How many people volunteer with Operation Safety Net?
Well, it depends. In the winter, we get a lot more volunteers
Okay.
because we run the winter shelters as well. But I'd say, we have a steady pool of 20 to 30 people.
And they rotate?
Some people, they stick with their night or whenever it is. In the winter, they rotate more.
Okay.
But we have people that volunteered in the 90s that, will pull out of mothballs and they'll jump in again.
Nice. So where did your inspiration come from? You spoke about, wanting to teach the kids something different, the students something different, and learn from the people. But where did that inspiration come from?
Well, like I said, I think you come into your life, your career, with a vision of how things should be and why you want to do what you want to do. I wanted to go into medicine because I just saw it as a blessing, a way to not only make a living, but help people and be there with them. I always loved when I saw people, whatever they were doing, they really thought about whether it was going to work for somebody. So as a medical student, I was in India, and I went to visit a occupational therapy place for people with leprosy. And these are poor people, and they took the time to really think about what kind of jobs they could get and adapt the digging tools and things like that so that they could actually make a living. We're so hung up in our system being the center and not the reality of other people being central.
Right.
To me, that's just unacceptable, that we can't honor what each person is actually going through and what's going to actually work. As a result, things don't work. People get sick, they die, they get frustrated with being herded through like cattle.
Yeah.
And it's just so much more interesting to me to think about whether it's really going to work for people. It was that way with domestic violence. I had to adapt new ways to work with people so that they felt safe, that you had a long-term relationship out of which they could find their own healing.
Right.
That you partner with people in the community that knew more than you did. And it works. And I like things that actually work.
And it's not just the medicine and like, here's your symptom, here's the medicine that you need, or here's the surgery that you need, but you're connecting on an emotional level to really get down to those problems on a human level.
It dehumanizes people to be treated just like something you can bill for.
Right.
We wouldn't want that ourselves.
Definitely.
And it dehumanizes the person that's doing it too, because you don't feel like you're being the person you would want to be for someone else. And honestly, we have to break through those barriers to rehumanize not just medicine, but I think a lot of things in society.
Yeah, I'd agree. So you sort of mentioned that you started the street medicine here in Pittsburgh and pioneered that. But since then, you've traveled to different places, and the street medicine has been it's been started in multiple different locations around the world, not just here in the United States either.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about how that came to be.
Well, I'm an adventurous guy. I have to admit that. I love to see the world. I love to see what's going on in other kinds of people's lives. So, for other reasons, I happened to be in India early in my street medicine career. I had never heard of anyone else doing medical work on the streets.
Yeah.
And I heard about a doctor in Calcutta, Jack Prager, and they said, "Oh, you should see him. He's been doing the same kind of work as you since 1979." So I made my way up to Calcutta. I got to meet Mother Teresa briefly.
Oh, that's cool.
It was cool. And we had a good talk. And then I went to see Jack, and I was amazed because all the things that I've been just inventing out of thin air, he had also created there. And he had a way to work with populations that he may not see again, people whose literacy may not be good. He had sometimes tensions with the police and the community when he worked with folks on the street. He had volunteers. He had all the same logistics.
So you both pioneered this. Did you come up with a lot of the same ideas and practices? Did you learn anything from each other by?
I'm not sure he learned anything from me. He did offer to let me take over for him because he's got a good sense of humor. But that was 1993, and I'd say I was more affirmed that I wasn't alone. And I didn't forget how powerful that was for me to think, I won't stop this because I know it's right, but at least someone else is doing it.
Right.
And I'm not alone. And that was so important to me that as other people got interested, I made it clear that they could call me anytime. I visited other cities. I let people come here to Pittsburgh. And I learned about some other people who had also been doing street work. There weren't many, but Jim O'Connell in Boston had been doing street work, and Dr. Greer in Miami. But they'd never connected. So I think my big contribution was to obsessively build a family of people that could feel supported by each other. And I called it street medicine because it needed a name, because if you give it a name, then it's a real thing.
Right.
Like calling something a fire department. And then the people that you serve become more real. Absolutely.
So that has evolved over the last several years. And in 2009, I believe, you created the
Institute.
The Institute,
yeah.
The Street Medicine Institute.
So I didn't know how to harness this momentum of people. Someone suggested that I should start a series of programs like mine in other cities, and I just didn't like the McDonald's model because everybody has their own situation and stakeholders, and it's so much more grassroots. So the first thing I did was to create a meeting, an annual meeting, the annual Street Medicine Symposium. We had our first one here in Pittsburgh.
Oh, wow.
In 2005. To me, it was like a watershed event. They all went on the streets with us. There were 17 people. Dr. Prager was there from India, Jim O'Connell from Boston, and other leaders that I knew. And so we've met every year. We're having our 14th meeting this fall in Rotterdam. They've been asking to have us go there. And we had 500 people at our last meeting. Many students from all over the world that are passionate, that are integrating it into their medical and nursing school curricula. So it's this huge snowball that has built. But to pull it together, I needed a new organization. So that's why we started the Street Medicine Institute.
So what is, actually before that question, you mentioned it's being taught more in schools now. Is that common practice? Is it every medical school or just some medical schools?
Well, my dream is that anybody who's still sleeping on the streets in the world should have access to care that is going to work for them. So street medicine at this point. And my other dream is that every health science school should have a classroom of the streets, because I think it's a transformative experience. I had a student say after a month with us, she said, Dr. Withers, I got my common sense back this month. I think you will never look at any other patient the same way if you've really been with someone who's been super excluded and bonded with them, because everybody has that to some degree. So it is spreading fast. I don't have a count of how many medical schools are now and nursing schools that are doing it, but it must be a couple dozen. The students often help start that. We mentor them at the Institute.
Yeah.
But it's the fastest trend of growth in street medicine right now.
That's really cool. And I mean, getting it into the schools and teaching it to new doctors that are coming up, it's going to inspire more street medicine in other places in the world.
And I think that's a legitimate goal, is to have more care to people on the street. I'm hoping that it'll go deeper and that it'll be connected with a curriculum, if you will, of insight about the fact that there are many people that are excluded. And you can use the same tools of engagement to include them.
It's not just the homeless, there's other areas.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a different way of looking at health.
Absolutely. Taking it from the person's point of view rather than the healthcare provider's point of view. So you mentioned the bond that the medical students get whenever they work with the homeless and how that helps them. I imagine you've formed several relationships over the past 26 years.
Yeah.
How has that impacted or molded your work or you as a person?
Oh, wow. It's been, except for maybe my kids, you know, and health, et cetera, it's been the biggest blessing in my life. And you wouldn't think from folks that have nothing that you could get so much. But there's a bond there that means a great deal to me. As a kid, I used to go around town and even visiting my folks later, and people would run up and they'd say, "Oh, Dr. Withers," my dad, the real Dr. Withers.
Yeah.
And they would say, "You know, your dad delivered me. He was my doctor. He made a house call." And you could just see, you know, how much that meant to him too. And I have that in Pittsburgh. I have all these people, not just on the street, you know, that just, you could see the love in their eyes and hope when they see our teams. But I went into a bank not too long ago to pay a bill, and the guard said, "Dr. Withers?" And I didn't know him.
Yeah.
And I said, "Do I know you?" And he said, "I was living under a bridge in the 90s, and you people helped me. Thank you very much." So that kind of quiet awareness, and we've housed over 1,600 people in apartments over the years. So there's a snowball, there's a cumulative effect of including people in a healthy community. But the only way that you can do that is by building community where there was none, or where there's a fragmentation.
And I mean, your reference to hope right there. Working with the people on the streets, you're not just giving them medicine and making them feel better, you're also giving them hope and letting them know that someone else cares about them. And like you say, you've housed 1,600 different people, and you saw the police officer. So his life may have been completely different if he hadn't met you and your team.
Might have been. He thinks so. I think we're in it together, and I'm benefiting my humanity, just in deep ways. I'm benefiting from the love I get from people that I'm lucky enough to serve medically. They are the ones that reclaim their own lives.
Yeah.
We don't fix anybody. But I think when you feel like you're a leper, when you're outcast, when you're treated like you're hopeless, then you can you can absorb that, especially if that's what you were told when you were a kid, and all the trauma that people have gone through. But when you become part of a group of people that say no, you'll never be not worthy of love. You'll never not be worthy of being my brother or sister. And people begin to not just hear that, but see it.
And feel it.
And feel it.
And by you treating the homeless as the humans that they are, it makes them feel like people again, like humans again, like part of society.
Right. And I feel more human too. So, you know, I get so much back. I can't tell you how many funny things that we've heard or shared. I spend more time laughing out there than crying.
That's great. And so is there anything that the people of Pittsburgh can do to help Operation Safety Net or the Street Medicine Institute?
Yeah, either organization would be more than happy to accept any donations that you might be able to give. I think at a deeper level, looking for ways to build community. Okay. I know some of the other people that you've interviewed on your series. I have so much respect for them, and I see the Pittsburgh really beginning to come together in a really global way around a sense that we should look at the positive, innovating, not accepting things as they are, but creating a new future. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I was able to get the work that I'm doing started here, you know, because of my Sisters of Mercy, but also because just Pittsburgh is a great place.
It is an amazing place.
And
great people.
I think the more we bond in building community in a positive way, the more impact we're going to have around the world. So. And
that's a movement and a thing that I've seen in Pittsburgh too. What you're speaking of is this idealistic views that no one should go without food, no one should go without clothes, no one should go without medicine. And in the past, people would say, oh, that's just a dream, that's just the way the world is. But there are a lot of people in Pittsburgh right now that are working to make that ideal world a reality.
Yeah, and not just talk, but get off your duff and come up with new ways, because it's fun to create new solutions.
Absolutely.
And you're not alone.
So if you had to pick one principle, one thing that sort of motivates you and inspires you to continue to do what you do every single day, what would that be?
Well, for me, love is a verb, and it's something when you exercise it not just maybe has a benefit to others, but it just increases my own sense of my time on this planet being more meaningful to me. And once you get on that path, you could call it an addiction.
Yeah.
But I think God made us that way to exercise. You know, when we're told to feed the poor and take care of our brothers and sisters, you know, it's a really clever thing to say, because what it does is it doesn't just help other people, but it also really helps you as a human. So it's like someone saying, you know, do your exercises, brush your teeth. It's really something that makes your life in the time that you have on this world so much deeper and richer. And I feel sorry for folks that can't tap into that for whatever reason. But the sooner you can, and the deeper you go, the richer you'll become spiritually, and your happiness and other things just kind of fall into place, I think, for the most part. So I think that's what I've gotten into in my own life that keeps me moving forward. And as I see young people coming along who just thrive with a little bit of affirmation.
Yeah.
And I know they're smarter than me. I get a deal of satisfaction to think about the future, even after I'm gone.
That's great. That's a very inspiring answer. And love is a verb indicates there's action behind that
Yeah.
love, and that you're reaching out and giving to other people.
Yep.
And I couldn't agree with you more that doing that, it not only helps the world and society, but it brings you so much inner peace and joy and purpose.
And it's more fun.
And it's more fun. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for having me here today and allowing us to do this interview. And everyone out there, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and you subscribe on YouTube. And until next time, stay inspired, Pittsburgh.